Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of This Is Our Life. Okay, and I'm going to tell you something about my youth, and this is serious. This is not one of my videos that I just, tell you some of the strangest things in the world. Um, for those who don't know, I lived on Okinawa from 1967 to 1972. And those were great years. I loved that island. Growing up there was magical. Anyway, so we lived in what, 5 years we lived in 4 houses. The military life for you, right?
Why do they keep moving you around?
Well, I don't know why we moved from the first to the second house. But from the second house to the third house, my father had a security clearance, and things were getting hot. And by the way, that's my wife in the background. And
still, it doesn't make any sense.
So he was told that he had to move the family on base.
What if he would have said no?
Then they would have court-martialed him or something.
That's bullshit.
And then from the third house to the fourth house, the third house was a 2-bedroom house, and my sister came along, and we were basically sharing a room. My father made a partition for the room, and like her crib was on one side, my bed was on the other, and we just needed more room, so we moved to another house which was on Cleveland Court, if anyone remembers Cleveland Court. The first house we lived on base was a duplex.
Sounds irritating.
It is.
Damn moving.
That's why everything was in storage in Virginia instead of with us. But be nice, Maggie. Anyway, so to be honest with you people, I prefer living off base. I always preferred off base. It's just a lot different. I mean, you don't have the rules and the regulations. You don't have the MPs running around all the time. Maggie, yes, she's in heat, people.
The box driver's nuts.
Yeah, you don't have them driving around every week to make sure your lawn is cut short enough, and stuff like that.
I bet they don't do that shit now.
I hope not. I mean, they didn't get out and measure it or anything, but
hell, go to hell.
Yeah, but they would drive by, and if they felt it was too high, they would say something.
I say, well, you want to change? You get the mower, and get out there and do it yourself. Otherwise, shut your mouth.
And
I wouldn't get along well with them.
I also remember how back in those days, if a man, shouldn't call him a man, a male, if I can even call him that, was beating his wife, and you called the MPs, all the MPs would do is they'd show up, they'd try to calm the situation down, and they would leave. What would happen? The guy would go, after his wife again.
Good thing it wasn't my mother who was getting beat. She would have turned around and beat the shit out of my father.
So anyway, some good stuff. Because I remember marbles. I remember playing marbles in the sand. There was plenty of sand on the island. And there was this, when we lived on Machinado Military Dependence Housing Area, there was this, I don't know if it was a church. I always thought it was a church school. But I didn't go there. I went to Machinado Elementary School. But to get up to the school, it was this, I could go back now and say, oh, that wasn't steep at all. Who knows? I was just a little kid. But it seemed like that road up there to the school, it was steep and it twisted. Like, if you're looking toward the west, and the road would go up and take a slight bend to the south. Anyway, we decided, we all like to watch Speed Racer. What kid at that time, our age, didn't like Speed Racer? So we thought we were going to be cool. We were going to go all the way up there. We're going to take our not sleds, wagons, and we're going to go all the way down. We made it all the way down, but not in the wagon. We eventually went tossing and turning, and anyway, hey, we tried it. That was what was fun. A few scrapes and cuts and bruises. That's okay. When we lived, the first on-base house we lived in, like I said, was a duplex, and a priest and his mom lived right next to us, and behind us, on the way to the elementary school, to Machinato Elementary School, to the right, there would have been this cliff face, which that would have been right along the Shuri-Naha line during the war, and there were these little, like, dugout holes into the cliff face. And, Lucky, please stop scratching. I never went up there. I was always afraid if I went up there, I'd find a grenade or a landmine or landmine or something, or even bones. And I didn't really want to do that. But then over there was the school. There was these types of caves on Okinawa. I've only heard of them and seen them on Okinawa, never anywhere else. And there was one between our house and the school before we moved to Cleveland Court. And there's a hole in the ground. It goes some distance in one direction. The other direction, it goes like 5 or 10 feet and it stops. The Lily Tower, for those who don't know the Lily Tower, was a cave like this, south of Naha. During the war, some Okinawan school children and their teachers were on field trip. And all of a sudden, boom, the battle starts. The aircraft start bombing and strafing. The ships out in the China Sea start pounding the island, and they had to go somewhere for safety, so they went into this cave. They stayed there a while too. The Americans came up on them eventually, and with an interpreter asked them, "Who are you? Are there any Japanese soldiers down there?" They said, "No, there are no Japanese soldiers." And there are two incidents like this, one with Japanese school kids, one with Okinawan school kids. Different locations, but so the Americans told them, "You have to come out. We're not going to hurt you. You have to come out." They didn't believe them. They thought, we're going to come out and you're going to hurt us. So they lobbed hand grenades down there eventually. Not right away. I mean, they, negotiated, so to speak. And when the Americans finally went down there, what did they find? Not a single Japanese soldier. I don't know how that must have weighed on those guys. Anyway, so when we lived off base, our second off base house, our last off base house, we had a brick wall around the house, so it was really like a fence. It wasn't tall like a wall. And from the yard, you could see the China Sea if you look to the west. Wait, am I getting that right? You're looking toward.
Lucky, quit scratching.
Yeah, you're looking toward the west. Earlier I should have said that school, you would have been looking toward the east, not the west. I had that mixed up. Anyway, so one of the nice things about living off base was a lot of your friends are locals. And, that's the way it was in Spain. We didn't know any Americans in Spain. Well, my father had a guy who worked for him who was an NCO that was an American, but they didn't hang out together or anything. And, yeah, Maggie really wants to cuddle with you. Anyway, our kitties and he.
She's about to drive us nuts.
And anyway, so one of my neighbors,
Hey.
They had a flat roofed house, and sometimes like they'd go up on it and play or have parties or whatever. And I was over there one day, and I didn't leave. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go home. So what did one of the like they had a teenage son, and he's like, "Well, you better go home, or the boogeyman's going to get you." I'm like, "The boogeyman." Oh, so eventually I start going home. I'm looking all around me for the boogeyman. I don't know how old I was.
Brad.
Yeah, I mean that was before kindergarten, I guess. So I was 4 or 5 years old. I went to Machinato Nursery School. One of my teachers was, who do we call her? Was it call her Teacher Joe or Teacher Duncan? We call her Teacher Duncan. Her name was Joe Duncan. She and her husband and their 3 kids. I think it was 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Cindy Duncan was their daughter. I don't remember the boys' names. They lived across the street from us, also in a duplex. Now, get this. My father was a major. My father earned his rank. Mr. Duncan was an academy grad. My father had served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Mr. Duncan had not served in any war. He had served during the Vietnam War, but he had not served in Vietnam.
Maggie, stop it.
My father served both in Vietnam and during Vietnam. Whereas my dad was a career man. He didn't just go in for a few years, he was a career man. But Mr. Duncan, he thought, we're better than you because I went to West Point. I'm a cool dude.
Big deal.
And but like I said, my father had been in 3 wars. Mr. Duncan hadn't been in one.
Your father probably could have beat the shit out of Mr. Duncan without any training.
Probably. And then another thing we used to do, there were these ditches, because it rained a lot in Okinawa, and it's an island.
And your father looked like he was in very good condition.
Yeah, and my dad was he started off working as a not longshoreman, merchant marine.
Maggie, shut up.
Anyway, and we used to crawl through like the drain pipes, the concrete drain pipes, and kids would get stuck doing this, and we weren't supposed to do it, and I would get like really paranoid. I would go, oh no, I'm going to get stuck, or I'm going to get caught, but I would do it anyway, but then as I got older, I couldn't, do it anymore. I got too big.
Yeah.
Now, from that house that we lived in, off base, when you're looking to the west over the China Sea, this Japanese businessman had bought some land down yonder, and he was building this huge house. I mean, humongous. And he even had a water cistern that he was building into it. And anyway, there was an Okinawan school down there. And this is not between Machinato and where we live. This is going between where we lived and Highway 1. Machinato would still be to the south. Naha would still be to the south. There's a toy store. There's a toy store across the street from the main gate of Machinato. There was a toy store when you were going to our house off base. When you turn off Highway 1, you turn to the right, and you go up the hill. I remember the big trucks, when they would start to move again, like everybody would stop, and they would just kind of like back up a few inches. I was like, oh no, it's going to hit our car. And Mr. Bell! Anyway, so there was a toy store up there, which I think was also on the right. You turn right onto the road, off Highway 1. You drive up the hill, and then on the right side there was a toy store. There was Those were good days. There was this restaurant. You go. Oh, there was a Japanese command center that they were digging out when we lived there. I think they had just started digging it out, and we went down and got to see that. There was an old DC-3 beat up from the war, left over from the war, out by what at the time was the rubble of Surrey Castle. We used to play in that. But going on Highway 1, going north, I believe before you got to Okuma, on the left side there was this restaurant. Like the back side was built on stilts, and back behind it, like the fishermen would anchor their boats. But at low tide, they would have to go out because when low tide came in, that whole area was dry. I mean, this is a huge area that would dry out. And my dad would take me over there, and we would just go for a walk. And there was a little islet or little miniature island, and we could walk all the way around it. And it was tall. I mean, you know, we would have definitely been underwater if we would have been standing there when the tide came in. We found some coral. We found a lot of coral back in those days. And I don't know what happened to all the coral we had. But this little restaurant, my dad took me in there a few times, and they had cold plates with like octopus and stuff like that on them. And I always wanted one, but my dad would never let me have
What were
one.
they?
Octopus?
I mean, was it food or was
Yeah,
it?
food, yeah.
I thought maybe it was a cold plate, you know, like kept in the refrigerator or something that had been made with a picture, an image on it.
And so I love going to Suicide Cliff.
So you never got to try octopus?
Oh yeah, I've had octopus.
Do you like it or not?
Not really.
It's kind of like squid. If you don't cook it the right way, it's like eating rubber bands.
Yeah. A&W Drive-In. I loved going to the A&W Drive-In.
Maggie, stop it.
There was this amusement park. I don't remember it ever being open, but my dad took. Well, my dad. I don't know. You know, some of the stuff my dad did. So I'll just say that much. But we went over to this amusement park once, and he met some people. We met they were like me and my dad, and these, I guess, couple of guys, and there was like an envelope handed over, and they left and we left. Don't ask me what was going on. I don't know. Once we went and we got to see the Nike missiles. It was a school field trip. I remember the snakes. Oh my gosh, there were snakes everywhere.
Oh. That bad, huh?
Yeah.
I thought you said steaks.
Well, we did go to what's that steakhouse?
Ponderosa?
No, it was a Japanese steakhouse.
Kobe
Steakhouse. Oh my gosh, was that good? Anyway, so this video is almost 20 minutes long, so I'll end it now. But a lot of really good memories from Okinawa. I loved growing up there. I sorely miss Okinawa. I wish I could take my wife to Okinawa, even though it's changed considerably. I'd still like to see it again.
Oh, right now I'm wishing I could go to the Squam art workshops.
Where's that?
It's in... they're very expensive workshops. They're up in northern New Hampshire. I'm trying to find the Deep Haven, Rocky Wold Deep Haven camp.
Oh. Okay, people.